Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order, and it is 5:01, Sarah. I need a motion to approve the agenda for the November 14th, 2023 board workshop meeting. Mary Caitlin, Jan, all in favor? Aye. Which brings us to workshop topics.
I know this is everyone's favorite first one. It's student services, and there's so many investments that the board provides, so our students have all of the support they need to be successful, and that our teachers have resources as well, so they can make sure that they're taking care of and supporting our students to the greatest extent possible. So there's many programs related to student services, and Deb Miles is the author and leader. And she has a great team here that's going to support the conversation with Liz Russell with the Youth at Risk Survey. So I'm going to give you this so I don't, annoy you when I can't get that.
Here. All right. Good evening. Thank you. So Liz Russell is our substance abuse prevention social worker, K-12 across the entire district. She's here joining me tonight. And so we're really just going to give you a recap of what we have started in the summer and what we, to this point, have done, along with plans for the rest of the school year and some things that we're working hard on to support our students and then ultimately, of course, our teachers as our students navigate their school day. So just right out of the gate, we spent a significant amount of time doing curriculum writing for our PBIS teams. We do that every summer. It's a great way for them to kind of take a look at their data from the previous year and determine where they want to align their lessons to and prep their lessons for the upcoming school year. And so we did some of that. This summer, we actually spent time aligning the PBIS matrices across the entire district. Everybody sort of had their own. They were very similar, but when we find students moving from one school to the next, vertically, as well as because of different catchments across the district, we felt it was really important that all of our PBIS matrices were consistent in their language and in their goal. So we did that as part of our curriculum writing and also aligned it to our everyday speech, social emotional learning curriculum. And then as part of Day 187, and always being responsive to the behavioral challenges that some of our students have present with, particularly at our elementary level, but that's currently rolling up to our high schools. We spent a significant amount of time with our 187 program focusing on supporting and managing today's learners, and all of our teachers participated in this and received some education on evidence-based theories, on the origin and purposes of behavior, so understanding kind of where behavior is coming from. They also looked at personal beliefs about behavior and how it should be managed, evidence-based strategies to proactively set students up for success, de-escalation techniques, and how their own personal emotions and experiences affect their practice in terms of responding to behavior in the classroom.
Day 187 is the professional development day that staff is responsible to participate in, and so it's our opportunity to get everybody on the same page. It's one day, it's contractually bound, and it's been implemented wonderfully over the past several years with priorities just like this. So that when you hear day 187, that's just our professional development day. Sorry.
Yep, for our certified teachers. Yep,
And I think when we were on some of our school visits, well, we've been to 2, I think. Brooks Hill, I think, mentioned that they had aligned, right, with all the other schools. So they were using phrases that were the same. And I think they were sticking with like the Raider way as opposed to, what they may have done in the past. So definitely saw it across the board so far. Yeah, which I thought was exciting.
Good. Great. Thank you. Okay, so when we talk about cell data, and we're not jumping into numbers tonight, but just giving you some ideas of what sources we pull from. And then obviously when we'll be working closely with Lisa Benson regarding MTSS, and when we get our, our warehouse, for lack of a better term, in terms of how to store our data and be able to evaluate it and learn from it, we'll be able to enter some of this stuff in there as well. But some of the things we look at are youth risk behavior survey, of course, fresh out of the gate. Kids just took that a few weeks ago. Our social emotional screens that we offer, our early warning indicators, our buildings are looking at, they're tracking attendance, grades, and behavior and discipline across our students. And then, of course, we can look at the threat assessment and suicidality or self-injurious behavior assessments in terms of the number of students that reach that critical point. So Liz is going to spend a little bit of time just kind of giving you some highlights on our youth risk behavior survey. And that's going to respond to that. So you're going to have to somehow click that open. No, go back.
I think
Do
you
you
got to
have
open
access to the link inside the presentation?
Thank you.
I tried that. So that's why I did this.
There you go. Great.
Because it's a PDF.
So you're gonna be the clicker here, I think.
I'm on it, man.
You're on it. Okay. So thank you for having me tonight. I look forward to talking to you all about our students. We have a lot to be excited about, a lot to be proud of. So every other year, our students participate in the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. And that is a countywide, it's actually a nationwide assessment that is anonymous. And I promise you it is anonymous. People always ask me that, and I tell the kids, we're not like, I don't even know how he would do it, but we're looking at big trends. It is completely 100% anonymous. And we're asking kids questions about risky behaviors, substance use, but also about assets and protective factors, wellness, and mental health. So it's a ton of very rich data, and there's going to be a lot of ways that we'll be able to share that with you as the year unfolds. What did work?
See,
Good job. So these
believe.
are, I tell people, when people say, what are the popular drugs that teenagers are using? It's the same for drugs that were popular when you were in high school. It's just different delivery devices and different potency. So these are the 4 areas that we look at. We looked at vaping, marijuana, alcohol, and pills. And we have very good news. In all of our, these 4 departments, our numbers are pretty darn good. So I'll go through quickly, but vaping is down 38, 44, 24, 13. So that's one I'm really excited about. And a big shout out to our administrators and to our families, because they're really, and our teachers who are talking about this. That's what we've asked our community to do, and they're doing a good job. So last night we went through some of this information. THC use is down.
Liz,
yeah.
Just to back you up, just to get
Yeah.
a broader perspective, the Youth Risk Survey, it's our only longitudinal study,
Thank you.
25 years of data.
Yeah. So we've been giving this for decades. We have longitudinal data to look at. We also can compare Fairport to the Monroe County sample. So not only can we look at the trends over time, but we can compare ourselves and see how we're doing compared to the folks all over the county. So this is very valuable data to us.
And can you look at, I know this was a question that came up, I think, among some of us, and I'm pretty sure you can, but can you look at cohorts of kids?
Yes.
Yeah. So
We can look at grades, schools. We can really break it down by gender if we wanted to. There's a lot of different
Right.
ways, and our partners at the county really help us manage the data.
Right.
And there's a lot of different ways to do that. So
And I know it's probably not perfect. Kids are not always honest,
No,
I'm
they're-
sure.
yeah.
But I think that's probably why it's a tool amongst
a
others.
tool amongst others, and the CDC creates this questionnaire, so they have some kind of flags in there to tell if kids are way off base, so that data can be removed.
Is the data overall available to the public? I mean, is someplace, and then how do these numbers compare? Like, so if we're way down in these categories, is that across the county as well?
So we gave the questionnaire a couple weeks ago.
Last week in October.
Yeah, last week in October. Other districts they haven't through January. to do this. So it's gonna be March before we can compare the data.
Yep.
But that'll be coming. And then one of the questions we're talking about is how do we best share this? It's a big survey monkey file right now that we want to find ways to share it with the people who need to know the information. So that's something we'll be talking about in the coming weeks. Yeah.
So this current presentation I can see is in board docs where the public could access it, although it's a little clunky to get to it. Is it
Okay.
hosted anywhere else where they would be able to see it if they missed the meeting last night?
We could do that.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna collate what we can. The one participant we couldn't film or broadcast, so that's why we had to manage it. But we're gonna post that information. I'll be putting it in one of my updates to say here's some important information. But I think more importantly, we need to find a comprehensive way to share it in a digestible manner. This data sometimes doesn't. I think that's what you're saying. It doesn't have the story and the narrative behind it.
Yeah.
But, sorry.
It's clunky, but it's our job to make it digestible and approachable and really usable. So next month, I'm sharing this with health educators because they're our best user of this data, and they really inform their curriculum decisions with this information.
And if this is jumping ahead, we can ask it later, but we were talking amongst ourselves about the anonymity, and it is anonymous, and it is absolutely anonymous, but the kids don't believe it's anonymous because this one time the kids answered it, and then 2 days later they got in trouble or whatever, however that works. And I guess I'm just wondering, like, what can we as a district do to build that trust with students so that this data is reliable and that they know as much as kids are ever going to know? Like, you're always going to be conspiratorial on this when you're in high school, but how can we get them to trust it so they're giving us accurate information?
Right. Good question. So the next time we do this will be 2025. And then we might need to send that message to all of our kids and family. We just kind of been always saying it's anonymous, and we've just assumed that everyone believed it, and maybe we need to revisit that.
I mean, it's a student report, right? It's a self-report, so it's as good as it is.
It's gonna be as good as-
right?
it's
So
always
I
gonna
think I think what we use it for is what's really more important. So it's not narrowing down the difference between 5 and 10 answers. It's shaping our programming,
Curriculum
our
writing, yep.
resources, and our curriculum.
Yep.
For us, and educating our parents so that they have the right conversations with their children and so forth as they go through developmental stages.
When you shared that you work with the health teachers on this, is this something the health teachers then talk to the students about? Like, this is what your class is reporting?
They do,
Okay.
and they survey the students too, and ask them, what are your concerns? I want to focus on the things that are most important to you. Over the years, our kids are our best advisors. So substances that were hot on the scene 10 years ago are gone. So our health teachers use this data, but also ask the kids what they're seeing and advise us too. So it goes both ways.
I was just going to give you props that I talked about this after the meeting I talked about this after the meeting last night with my 3 secondary students, and I was asking them what their thoughts were on the vaping numbers going down, and they said maybe because they talk to us about it all the time. And I was
That
like,
is so
okay,
great.
I think
We
they'd
do.
be glad to hear that.
We do. Yeah, prevention works. One of the things we know, is one of the predictors of vaping use is unmet curiosity. So if kids don't get the right answers, they fill in the answers, and they get information from their friends. And if they're seeking out friends who are using, they'll think that it's okay to use. So giving kids the right education is really important. So this will be available. I do point out that we need to look at our alcohol use numbers because my theory is because we focus so much on vaping and THC because of the legalization, and the pill misuse because of the opioid crisis. Alcohol went on our back burner, and it is the most abused substance for all people nationwide. So that number went up significantly, and I think that reflects all of society after COVID.
I was going to say, now that people are gathering more.
Yeah. So that's a number we're looking at. Pill use went down. We're thrilled about. Phil Janier was a great speaker last night, and he really gave us the gritty truth about starting with what starts with pill use turns into opioid crisis. So he was a great speaker. People always ask where the kids get this stuff, and it's really anywhere they want. But we talk to parents about being aware of the apps that are on kids' phones because that's one way they communicate. Factors relating to substance use. We know this doesn't just happen in a vacuum, that mental health, gambling, social media, screen time, sleep hygiene, cyber safety, all these things are things we talk to kids about because they relate to their wellness. So lots more data to come. Like I said, we're going to keep talking about this. We have other parent nights lined up where we're going to talk about social media and decision making and peer relationships. So this is rich data.
Because it's all related.
It's all related. Yeah.
The sleep one was interesting too.
Yeah.
The less than 6 hours. Yeah. Well, which I could see, if you have a student that is playing a sport and they're at games or practice, and then they have 4 hours of homework when they get home.
Yeah.
And then they have to be up again.
Yeah.
And that's just less than 6 hours. That doesn't even get into like the between 6 to 8 or
Right.
6 to 10, which is still sleep deprived for kiddos that age.
Right.
So, as I say, I was pleased to see the suicide ideation numbers dropping so
Yes.
much. I mean, 11% of a student body is still a sobering number to think about
Right.
when you put it into a number. But I'm happy with the response team the district has and the programs they have in place to kind of help kiddos through situations like that.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, it's so much slower than pre-pandemic, though. I try to figure out what's changed. Is it the level of support, the level of discussion, the level of acceptance that it has less stigma to admit or the call, having a trusted adult is just such a big drop.
Yeah.
I could, any number of those things. I mean, there's this
All the above,
heightened
right?
awareness on mental health after mental illness after the pandemic.
Yeah. We have a number, right? A 3-digit. I can't remember what it is. 411.
Yeah, I think we've given our staff really good tools
9-8,
for talking about difficult topics like self-injury and suicide ideation and threats. I think that's something we've done really well in the past few years of really giving our staff the tools to do it.
And one thing that jumped out at me looking at this was the trusted adult slide. The 65% of students have two or more adults other than parents in their life they're comfortable going to help. 73% feel people at school. It gets to something we've talked about with the merger and with everything. That trusted adult or the multiple trusted adults at school, such a game changer
Huge.
for kids. Yeah.
Is people at school interpreted as an adult at school, or is it anybody? Can it be friends at school?
That was adults.
It's adults.
Yeah.
For
Okay.
that one.
Yeah.
But then there was
That's
the
fabulous.
people feel close to. Yeah, there you go.
So 2 or more adults, and then feel close to people. The question is just people at school.
Right.
So I guess it's up to the interpreter. We just want to know, are there? Yeah, just feeling like there's people who care about them. Yeah. And I love that 88% of our kids agree that their family gives them support.
Yeah,
that's a good
that's-
number. So we're proud of that.
Yeah, that's the best option.
So we had a great night last night. We're looking forward to doing more of them.
Last year, I'm trying to think, it was Brotherhood, Sisterhood Week, that there were students that talked about suicide and the impact and their thoughts to other students. Was it during that week?
I think it was the family talk.
Okay, that's what it was.
And they shared how they felt safe coming back to school because they had adults and friends that they felt safe being with.
So I think what's going to happen now is Deb's going to be talking about very specific things to help us drill down to some of these
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think that's probably very impactful as well. When it's
yeah.
not just a staff or a teacher,
Yep.
that it's an actual peer too.
Absolutely. Right. So, okay, so just moving along, our social emotional screens, this just gives you an idea of how frequently we do this across the district. So our entering kindergartners at preschool, their parent does a parent rating scale on them as part of our placement and awareness as they come into school, making sure if they have any challenges or we think there's going to be any transition issues from home to school, that we are prepared to manage them. Our UPK program, obviously being new in our buildings this year, we are starting to wrap around some different resources with that program as well. So they're going to be completing the teacher rating scale out of the Children's Institute, which is part of our primary project program. They're going to be using that rating scale at the UPK level as well. We also gave access to the UPK teachers and staff to utilize our everyday speech social emotional learning curriculum so that those young students as they enter kindergarten already have developed some of the same language and ideas about social skill development. Our kindergarten through grade 3 actually does the teachers do the teacher rating scale for Children's Institute. That's how we determine whether students qualify for the primary project program, which is a peer-led, or not peer-led, it's a student-led play program. So in the playroom, the child sort of leads the activity and has the one-on-one support of an adult for conversation and skill development. And then our social emotional screens, 6th graders use the strengths and difficulties questionnaire as a self-report. 8th graders and 10th graders use the pediatric symptoms checklist as a student report. And as I stated, we're doing all those. 10th grade did it last week. 6th and 8th grade are doing it this week. And then we'll have that information, that information is not anonymous. It's very identifiable so that we can actually put interventions in place as needed when students report.
Which is
that they're having
probably
challenges.
where kids are thinking that they feel, yeah. That's, I was going to mention
Oh, if you're
that.
getting feedback, yeah, that's the one where they know. But that one is super different than the youth risk behavior survey. It's much friendlier, for lack of a better term. It's really more around, internalizing skills or internalizing behaviors, externalizing behaviors, and attentional behaviors. So just nice little prompts that they respond to pretty quickly within the past 6 months. And then we determine whether or not we should be reaching out and connecting with them. And again, just establishing a trusted adult for them to access. Our cell curriculum.
Are there
Any questions on the
about that
screeners? Because I know that there was lots, this was like one of the top items at a recent.
So all of our screeners,
at the-
parents can opt out of. And I will tell you, we get very few opt-outs for
That was,
any of these
weird.
screeners.
I don't think that's what we were going to say. When we were at the New York State School Board Conference, there were a lot of sessions that included information about screeners. So I know that many of us were reaching out to Brett and asking what we had in place compared to kind of what we were learning about as well.
So screeners have evolved and developed, and we
Right.
got in early. And
We got in on early with our partnership with the University of Rochester Medical Center. We actually have probably been doing them for close to 5 years now, maybe a little bit longer.
So there was one presentation that I was able to go to, and a district that had implemented the BIMAS, B-I-M-A-S, and they're able to administer it 3 times a year to every student, and it gives them like same day statistics and numbers on specific students. Like this student has in the past 7 days considered harming themselves, as well as other information, but it helps them really be able to track individual students' progress and really act on information. So I'm curious if we've considered a more frequent screener like that.
So we are having discussions about it. So what you're referring to is more of a universal screen, so that it reaches all students across, obviously age dependent, but across the district, instead of targeting just 6, 8, and 10. So Lisa and myself have been working with a couple of companies to take a look at what their universal screen looks like. So yeah, there's more to come on that. We're trying to identify one that works well for us. You need to do it, obviously, as part of MTSS. There's always that balance of, how many times do kids really love to be surveyed? Ask any student right now in Fairport how they feel about a survey, because they've probably been hit with about 4 or 5 in the past month, and more are coming. But that would be the intent, is that 3 times a year we would, just like we do some of our academic screens, we would do a social emotional screen, and then we would be able to, again, and know immediately what that looks like, but also enter that information into the MTSS system and be able to support students.
Is there any way to work around that potential survey fatigue?
not do them?
Open
Well,
for
or
suggestions.
space them out, because like I worry about like if one is done now or like in 2 more weeks, they're like you say, oh geez, another
Right.
one, and then are they
Are they
as
being-
forthcoming? Are they
Right,
how I know
exactly.
self-reported data is always
Yeah.
but does it get even more?
So as we add more, we have to obviously take a look at where do we get more value from, right? So if we add something more universal like that, then we may take away the ones that we're currently doing. So it's just a balance of figuring out what's going to give us the best information for us to support
And
kids.
so I wanted to put out a survey myself with about surveys. No, it was about how you're doing. It was a how you're doing survey. How can we be the best school district for you? And we decided, oh my gosh, these kids are going to be surveyed to death, and we thought that there'd be more value because they drilled deeper in the longitudinal pieces versus my.
Right.
So I think that's got to be baked in.
I almost wonder too, if they're doing the same survey 3 times a year and they get familiar with it, it kind of goes through, you know, and I think at least the biomass one they do on their phone too, a lot, or they can. So it just kind of becomes like, oh, we're doing this again today in health, and like click through more than maybe like taking different surveys all the time. And what's this one about? Is this one anonymous? Is it not anonymous? Like just the predictability might help with that.
Sure.
Could you just describe or let us know what happens if, you know, a data comes up that shows a student has, you know, considered suicide or is contemplating suicide? Like, what plan does go into place?
So what I'll tell you is even the ones we use and the ones that you're talking about, universal screens, correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa, but they are more surface level. They're not going to generally target a kid who has suicidality, right? They may have a notation place where they can add comments, and they might say something, and then typically software will red flag that terminology and make sure somebody's notified, but they're not diagnosing that type of level of severity with a screen. In particular, the ones that we do, as I said, there's some internalizing behaviors about peer relationships or feelings of anxiety and so forth. There's externalizing behaviors about how you're getting along with peers or stealing or fighting or different things like that. And then there's attentional things like, do you daydream in class? Are you fidgety? Like those types of things. What we do with that data when somebody gets a positive score, we notify the parent with a letter to reach out to myself, or also we have our University of Rochester Medical Center lead person on there as well for them to make a direct contact to outpatient behavioral health. We give them ideas about what to do. Call your school counselor, reach out to your pediatrician, all those things if you have concerns or seeing some of the same behaviors at home.
So I really believe we're wired for productivity here, in that there's so many layers. There's on the website, the helpline, right?
Oh yeah,
We
Safe
get-
School. Yep, Safe School Helpline. Yep.
We get very direct information. That's our Saturday night call. That's our Friday night call. That's an immediate notification. That's where plans are, because people know, see something, say something. And that's something, again, that's something that we've baked in. So I just wanted to add to that piece. The immediacy piece is what I'm always scared about. And
But I think you touched on what I was asking is you immediately said the parent is contacted, you know, with
100%, yeah.
resources to go.
Right.
That this is not this is a parent, school, child connection of trying to build.
Yep.
you
And
know,
I
would
have to
say
tell
that,
you,
like the presentation that I went to, it was really interesting because they said it had a lot of those same questions. You were talking about like internalizing, externalizing, that affect the relationships, but it did have one question that said, in the past 7 days, have you considered harming yourself? And they said some students who are afraid to say anything else can just make the effort of that, and they get an immediate notification to their school, and the school can call the parent that day on the phone and tell them this is an issue right now. And although that's still, 3 times a year they're giving that, to me that seemed really powerful to be able to have something that directly asked that and gave that opportunity for immediate action, like not a letter, but like there's a phone call in the past 7 days, and just to be able to really work on that.
yeah, absolutely. So like I said, so we send the letter, but I have to tell you, like some of my best conversations in the time that I've worked here have been with parents one-on-one over this screen, because while it may identify or give us a little bit of a red flag, the conversation with the parent is, this is awesome. This is exactly what we're seeing at home. We didn't know how to label it. We didn't know what to do about it. And so it just generates the ability to connect people to resources. So that's been great. But, okay, so social emotional learning curriculum. We are 2 years into the elementary. Yep, this is our second year of implementation for elementary. Everyday Speech is the program, and we are excited that we're rolling out this year for our first year for grade 6 through 8. So middle schools are gearing up. We have our joint faculty meeting, I think it's December 6th, with the consultant to walk the staff through the website and the curriculum, and then they will be rolling it out at the middle schools. So soft rollout this year, but then we'll be full on next year, and hopefully with the work of the middle school master schedule, that will also help support the opportunities to do these types of things, this type of work, teach the lessons and so forth with students. And as part of that license that we have, we also purchased the social communication curriculum, which is geared a little bit more toward our students with disabilities. So some of our special ed teachers, mental health staff have the opportunity to be a little bit more explicit with some of that learning and teaching, and do some more intensified work with kids in small group as well. Okay, so TGE updates are transgender, gender expansive. Some updates came out from New York State Ed last spring, and so we are doing some work around that. I think really Fairport has been ahead of this and been making good strides in this area. Like anything, there's always room for improvement, and so we keep learning and growing in this area. But Liz and Kelly did go around and do a brief presentation, professional development presentation to our faculty meetings at all 8 buildings, just to update on terminology, some of the new changes, really these 6 areas in which we should be focusing on: our spaces, our school records, confidentiality, health classes, athletics and activities, and resources to support students. And we are looking at our affirm name change protocol in terms of helping parents to fully, and students to fully understand, how that impacts their high school experience, as well as transitioning out of high school to employment and to college admissions, driver's license, and all those things that require your legal birth name. So working through that, putting that resource together for parents so that they feel like they have the wealth of knowledge they need to make that decision.
Before you move on, just a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So with where the presentations and athletics activities, so if we have coaches that do not work for the school district, or someone running a club maybe that does not work for the district, did they get access to those presentations as well?
Not really. I'll be very candid.
No, I'm just, yeah.
Our community coaches don't get a lot of access to our professional development, but it is incumbent upon us as building administrators and our director of athletics and our mental health staff that when we know we have somebody who is in this particular situation where they are choosing, well, not choosing, but recognizing that they want to be part of a different team because of how they identify, then we are working with our director of athletics to make sure that we're meeting their needs across which team and locker room preference and so forth. So, and that really extends outside of Fairport as well. So when we go on away competitions, we have to make sure that those same accommodations are offered to them as well at the visiting school. So that's just a lot of communication, right? But I think we do a pretty good job with that. So just making sure that we're honoring that. Let's see, Student Support Center. So you are aware that we hired our own person to staff our Student Support Center up here at the high school. Used to be a tutoring center solely with a BOCES tutor. We were excited to be able to hire and have Chris Tierling come on board with Fairport. He makes incredible connections with our students and our families and does a super great job, well connected to our staff. So he's servicing our students who are on in-school suspension. A portion of their day is spent with him working on academics as well as out-of-school suspension. We are obligated for elementary students to get 2 hours of tutoring. They still get it through BOCES because it's more appropriate for the elementary student to be tutored from home. But our secondary students, the requirement now is 3 hours a day. So they access the tutor center or student support center with Chris during that time. And then our students who are out for medical conditions, surgeries, and those types of things, they access that as well. And we're working with Chris. Chris is excited about restorative practices, so he's helping. We intend to grow this student support center and have more of our resources like Liz and Kelly Weishar and John Crocker pushing into this and supporting our kids with accountability projects. But Chris is already doing a super job of parent communication and teacher communication, so we're off to a good start there. And we have a new group coming our way. So the Body Project is a group that is being offered to us through, again, the University of Rochester Medical Center. A little bit different. It's not through our outpatient behavioral partnership, but Aileen Maraglia Ferguson is one of our school social workers at Dudley School, and her and Kelly Weishar are partnering with a trained facilitator from U of R and offering this group on right now to female students at the high school level. And it's actually just about body image, but it's trying to put in, it's trying to kind of reshape our thinking, our thinking of our female students in terms of what they see on social media, what they see on Instagram, what seems to be the ideal body image, to more of a realistic approach to how we feel about ourselves and care about ourselves. So that group is going to be starting in the near future. This is an evidence-based research project. We would typically want to offer it to more than just females because we know that this expands across, all gender identities. But in this particular case, because it's grant funded and research evidence-based, we are restricted to just female students for this first round. But we're already talking to them about expanding.
How many? Oh, there it is, 10 to 15 girls.
Yeah. Yep. 10 to 15 girls, grades 10 through 12.
And how? Okay.
Self-select, yep. It's not supposed to be, so it's actually restricts students who have eating disorders from being in it. So we're actually not, it's not intended to find, girls with eating disorders as being part of the project. It's self-select students that are interested in, kind of just diving into just healthy discussions about body image. Okay, and then some other student groups. So going along with our vaping numbers, you want to talk a little bit about Above the Influence?
So Above the Influence is peer-led group of 8th graders who are resolutely non-vape using. And they are going to help us spread some really good messaging that includes the adults that I care about, who's got my back, and we're going to make posters, and we're going to be in the cafeteria where kids can spread positive messages. And another campaign that we're going to do is called Reasons Why I Won't Vape. So they can share, I care about my health, or my soccer coach would be so disappointed, or so just spreading real positive messaging to help non-users stay non-users.
And that's coming out of the same, again, U of R seems to be connected with much of what we do, but again, different departments within the University of Rochester. Our Sources of Strength program also is probably in its 3rd or 4th year here in Fairport. So this is all about suicide prevention, peer-led program as well. They work 9 through 12 as a club after school and do campaigning and positive promotion about suicide ideation and making sure that you're connecting with an adult, trusted adult. So that continues as well. And then through our U of R partnership, we are starting a new group about peer relationships and social skills called Positive Pathways. And they are working with some of the students who are already connected with them to run a group in school during the day. Mm-hmm. That partnership, by the way, is also operating 5 days a week out of Minerva DeLand this year and last year, and also 2 days a week out of Fairport High School between AYA and outpatient behavioral health. So, and not surprisingly, there's a wait list for for the program, but they have reconfigured how they are running their referral process and how they're treating students and families. So there's 2 programs you can go into. You can go into the Ready program or the START program. START program is more of a intense crisis intervention mode, and Ready is more of a 6 to 8 week skill building kind of process. So it's getting kids kind of in, triaging them, giving them some skills, and kind of moving them out when they're ready to generalize those skills back to their school day and their outside life. So that's moving along nicely. Our wellness committee, we've only met once this year so far, but we're, I think, up next week. And so last year we revised the district wellness plan to account for many of the social emotional things that we're doing in the district. And we are going to focus this year on just the code of conduct annual review, as well as our TGE updates. So more to come on that. And then, as Liz started to talk about, and some of you may have been there last night, we started our parent nights, so our State of Our Students parent education. Last night we did our youth risk behavior survey at a glance. We also had Sergeant Phil Janier there from the Monroe County Sheriff's Office talking about substance abuse in our community. And then we had the adolescent young adult chemical dependency program there, talking about recovery and resources to support students. So that was Leah Hill, who's part of our partnership. They did a super great job. It was a nice, well-rounded presentation for the parents. So we had about 30 parents, so it's not too bad for a Monday night.
Don't say it.
We won't talk about what happened after. National TV.
You knew what I was doing.
So our next one, as Liz indicated, is going to be in January, and we're going to be showing the Screenagers Chapter 2 Anxiety film, and then we'll probably be setting up a panel to go with that to answer questions for parents. But anxiety is at an all-time high, so I think that is a perfect opportunity to delve into that film. And then our third one for March, we are working with U of R to sort of give a parent version of the positive pathways and talk about having conversations with adolescents about healthy relationships and social skills and peer relationships as we head into the spring and summer. And then some professional development things we have been either upcoming or have been doing. So another suicide prevention piece that we are doing is a training for our teachers. This is a 2 separate sessions, only accommodates 30 staff at a time, but we will build more in over the course of the year. And so this is a new method coming out of U of R as well, with question, persuade, and refer suicide prevention program. So it just gives, again, staff, teachers, those tools to have conversations with students about these concerns and being able to refer them to the right people. Our TBM training continues. We'll be revisiting our administrator, sentries, and mental health staff with our therapeutic behavior management training, de-escalation, verbal and physical in November. We'll be looking to do a para training in December on the conference days, and then our mental health first aid will continue in the spring. And then as part of our mental health department meetings, we've done a 3-part series with the University of Rochester on common elements of DBT and CBT, and then focusing in the second part on CBT, which we held today, and the third part on DBT. For those of you that are wondering, the acronyms, DBT is dialectical behavior therapy, CBT is cognitive behavior therapy. And so that really just gives our mental health staff some very specific skills on how to support our students who are coming back from therapists using these models, but also giving our mental health staff some targeted work to do with our students in their offices and generalizing back to the classroom so that they can grow from their time with them. I think that wraps it up. We're good.
Yay.
Questions?
Comprehensive. And I think This is a work in progress. I think we have board members who are on the wellness committee, so you'll be part of the code of conduct review. We're, always, again, the parent nights, everybody's welcome to be a part of, and you can see that work happening. And when we get into the budget season, we talk about all the programming and support that we have in place so this work can continue, because I know that mental health is a priority.
So when you're putting out the information on the survey, can we share maybe like any of the PowerPoints that are used at the
Yeah,
events?
yes, we need to strategize on the best way to package that, and I think that'll be coming soon, without a doubt. Thank you. Congratulations on a great season.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Thanks, Deb.
Okay. So next up we have UPK planning and projections.
Ta-da. Back again. UPK expansion proposed 5-year plan, and this is an ongoing conversation. I love the energy and passion behind it from the administrative team and our community, and of course the board and the wonderful support that the board gives. During this presentation, because this is an ongoing conversation, because as we build our budget, this will be a very important component of it. We're hoping that the board is going to continue to understand on our reliance on community-based organizations and why they're important to as we evolve our program. We have declining enrollment. It's sort of leveled out. We're in a good place. But given our class size parameters, how can we continue to build upon our UPK programming? Hope the board understands that increases to the UPK program will impact our total budget. So there's grants, and we aggressively are trying to get to those grants, but a lot of times we don't realize the grants, but there will be continued general fund costs, which I think budgets tell a story and budgets speak to priorities. But seeing it as part of the whole versus one part is going to be our opportunity as we move through the budget process. And we hope we recognize the intentional approach we're using to grow our program and ultimately being able to fund it, right? Because I think we want to be self-sufficient on that. We don't always want to rely on grants that, may or may not be there in the future. So, Matt and Tanya have been working very closely at, continuing to try to grow that and seeking feedback. And just by listening to the conversation here, that's going to help me understand how do we need to proceed and be informed from the questions and the thoughts. Even though there might not be answers here, they'll give me opportunities and other platforms to share information. So without further ado, we have Lisa and Tanya. Thank you.
And we'll be drawing on Matt at moments.
Do you want to take this?
Sure. Yeah. All right. So here we go. We added cute pictures because although there is impact on our resources, both budgetarily and others, there's kids here, right? So yeah, we are. We're playing on the heartstrings for sure. So if you just take a look at this graphic, we put together where we were. So you see the blue line where we were. So 22-23, we had 3 classes, and that was pretty standard for us for quite some time in Fairport, working just with generations, serving about 54 students year to year, and they were all off-site. This current year, we increased by 2 classrooms, as you know, brought in 2 new community-based organizations, and brought those classes into our buildings, which has been a lovely addition of cutie pies and also a little bit of work, right? And so what you see below that is a proposal of a slow growth of 1 class per year. And you'll note that at 27-28, we're talking about adding our own run UPK classrooms. And so eventually the plan would be to start running our own programs with our own staff and not relying solely on CBOs. Okay, any questions on that graphic? Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
How are we getting a sense of our demand relative?
Yeah,
I think,
there's still a wait list. Yeah.
Still a wait list. We had some PD with Webster and their
Yep.
experience, and if I recall, right, they were about 50% when they got the true universal pre-Ks, and
Yep.
anybody's welcome, but 50% took advantage of it.
Yeah.
Do we make that assumption here, or are we doing anything to try and get a sense that if we were to do it today, it would be 200, half of our annual enrollment?
Yeah. I would, I believe our lottery had close to 200 students in it.
Okay.
So I do think that there's probably about a 50% number. And so that would be our goal, is to get to the place. So you'll see we're at like 180 by 28, 29, to get to the place where there's not a wait list, or a very small wait list. Yeah.
When families decline it, it's usually connected to other childcare responsibilities that they have, because it is a 5-hour program. So if they need wraparound care, they might need to find a place where they can go that also has wraparound care. The other pieces, of course, once you enter kindergarten, you get to take the big yellow limousine to school every day. Right? That isn't part of UPK. So sometimes there's just a very practical issue of, I can't drive my child at 9:30 to get to UPK. So those tend to be very practical reasons why families end up declining, even if they were interested at first.
Declining of the 200, or you mean the other 200 that?
That's a really good question, Peter. I don't know if we will ever know why the other half didn't apply for the lottery. I would say to you that I think in growing our program, we had more applications for the lottery because people felt like they had a better shot of getting a seat. And so we also used to run our lottery very late in the year. It was in August. And we did that for the right reasons. And parents have to make plans. And so I know, as a working mom, I wouldn't be able to wait until August to know exactly what I'm doing for my children. And so I think a lot of our parents will opt into a lottery system if we continue to run it earlier in the school year. Right.
And there's the aspect of respect to our other preschool programs in the Fairport
Absolutely.
community when they're if they have students enrolled and then that student gets pulled for UPK in August, now they have open spots. And so
Yeah.
I can just speak for our families. Our kids weren't ready for a 5-hour program 5 day a week
Sure.
when they're in, at that age. So for our family, we chose a 3 day a week 2-hour program, and that worked for us. And I know there's a lot of people in Fairport that works for.
Yep.
And so let's just grow it until we
Absolutely.
hit full.
Jenny,
full.
can-
So,
Speak to us.
I have a
Yeah.
quick question
ahead.
on this graphic.
Yeah.
So the additional rooms needed, so it's 3 this year.
Yep.
Then one below that. Is
Yep.
that add up? So is it 4 additional rooms? So
So
it'll be 4
next
total
year,
rooms
4
and then
total,
5
yep.
rooms. Okay,
Yep.
so it adds.
Yep.
Okay, thank
Yep.
Meaning each additional room we want housed in our schools now.
Well, potentially. So I think we just need to look at potential, because some CBOs will say we'll have it on our own campus, on our own site. We opened it up to our CBOs this year because there was a need from Generations, who was being housed. One of their programs was being housed near the Pines of Parrington, or in the Pines of Parrington location, and that was under construction. And so they needed to use our site. We had space, so we offered that space. And I think that was helpful for 2 of the other 2 that we brought in to have that option to be on site with us.
And Tanya, I know
Yeah.
not everybody was here last year when we went through all the information, but when will it open this year?
Well, hold tight, Erica. We have a plan. So
Sorry, I have
if
one-
there's
I have
any
another
more questions on this one,
Just a quick question about that. So if we house it at the CBOs, a lot of the times they are able to offer wraparound care.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing to keep in mind. I love the balance of having them in our schools for the families that can drive there and back.
Yeah.
For the families that need to drop off earlier and pick up later, that's a good option too, because it takes out such a chunk of their day.
And we're not opposed to wraparound care too.
So-
Offering it in our thing. Okay.
yeah, we're going to explore that as well. But 2 of our 5 classrooms offer wrap care. So one of the programs are Generations, and then Carolot, who is housed in our building but has a bus and transports kids for the PM session. ideally, we would want more that have wrap care because that is a need for families. I know, Mary Caitlin and I have these same woes. Like my kids wouldn't have gone to pre-K if there wasn't wrap care as part of that, because that's not part of our family structure to have transportation in those odd hours. So
I don't know that there's an answer to this now, but I'm curious about the plan of having some be run by the community and in our schools
Yeah.
and some run by Fairport
Yeah.
staff in our schools, even just looking at what the pay and benefits differences
Sure.
between,
Yep.
a typical preschool and district and how that might.
That's like such a great, I like to call them haunting questions, because when that plays out, that will speak. Like, you're right. How is that going to rub out? Like, because then they'll be under our contracts and they'll be under, our benefits. And
we're going to talk a little bit
Kinda
about the cost
collide
impact.
with-
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah,
talk a
that's
little
just a
bit
good
about that
question.
cost
Yeah.
impact in our capacity, like what we feel our internal capacity is right now to take on those additional responsibilities of completely running the programs.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Who are we housing UPK? Because Kelly Weissar is absolutely amazing.
Amazing.
And she put it all together last year
Yep.
with you, Tanya. Who is housed and charged with our UPK program? Like, who is going to be doing this growth?
Lisa?
Okay.
So beyond grateful first for a director of MTSS, and if you remember in the job description and UPK,
yes, that was part of
so it's okay. Yeah, so the oversight, like Kelly is amazing. And let me just go back to the housing CBOs in our buildings, so community-based organizations in our buildings. Kelly was really intentional about offering families their the school that their kids would be going to. So like, for example, Brooks Hill of that class at Brooks Hill, I think 15 of the 18 students will be going to Brooks Hill. So it's just a nice transition for kids to be in that same building. So that feels really good. So Kelly was able to orchestrate all of that. But what we didn't realize was how much work Generations was putting in on the reporting side of things, because we were working with one CBO, Generations, for years, and Jeannie's amazing, and she was doing a lot of the back end work. And now, thank God for Lisa, because it needs to be administrative oversight on those pieces, and so Lisa's doing all of that. We're actually hosting the state tomorrow for some walkthroughs.
And
Yeah.
that-
Yeah.
That was mostly like our community is, learning
Yeah,
about this, and they
absolutely.
might not know who's housing it. So.
Thank you. Yes, I know it was a setup. And yes, like daily, I am grateful that you all invested in a director of MTSS and that we landed on Lisa. So sorry to embarrass you. You're welcome. All right. Anything else on this slide? Okay, let's get into some goodies. All right. Yeah, here's a picture. Look at the cuteness. Oh my gosh. And adding and growing UPK is not without impact on all sorts of our resources. So physical, human, and fiscal. And we're going to go into some of those impacts, not everything, but just a surface level on the impacts, just so we have an understanding as a community. So physical resources. If we're housing within our buildings, we need to understand that there's space that needs to happen, right? And you could walk through our buildings right now and say, oh, we could find a room here, we could find a room there. But there's also competing interests for those rooms, right? We are bringing back students from outside programming for special education. We have higher needs in our special ed programming. And with that comes a need for specific spaces for our kids, more OT space, more sensory rooms and calming spaces specifically for students who have that as part of their IEPs. And so we just have to be sure that we're not overextending ourselves as far as space goes.
Well, and we want to do the rooms right. Just because we can find a space doesn't mean like
Absolutely.
just toss. Yeah.
Absolutely. And also, as part of having UPK on site, they are accessing our other areas, our gymnasiums, our playgrounds, and we're making it work, right? And it's been a really nice partnership in our buildings, and it's still just an impact on resource, and we just have to keep that in mind. So not a game changer, not a stop, but just to have in our heads.
It speaks to the incremental growth. I think.
Exactly. All of this is about why we're going slow to do it well and do it right. So, yeah. Yeah, that's how we do it. So if the gymnasiums are open, we let UPK know that these periods they're free and you can access. The playgrounds are free on these periods. We found some space outside one of the rooms so they can just like go outside and do sidewalk chalk and things like that. So we're being really creative to get kids outside and active, but it takes a little bit of coordination, right? It's also a required part of the. I mean, we have to do it as part of UPK, so it's not an option. It's just how do we fit it all in? And then if we look at our impact on human resources, so a lot of our students require our nursing services. So if they're taking medication at school, or even if there's a bump, a bruise, a cut, a whatever, right? Then it happens, and it happens. They're accessing our nurses. And that's been a wonderful partnership so far, and everybody's playing very nicely. We just need to recognize that it is a little bit of a drain. Food service, so our programs that are housed in district, we are feeding them a breakfast and then a snack. And well, it's really a lunch. It's breakfast and lunch, really. So part of the requirements for UPK are at least a meal and a snack in a 5-hour program, but it just works for us to do it that way. And so we're using food service to do those things. That's a drain on our food service.
Very cool watching them eat together at
The family?
They
Yeah,
eat
the family
style
experience,
in the,
yeah.
Classroom.
And again, part of a UPK program, that's part of the programming is that they have to do family style. And Michelle and her team have been absolutely wonderful on meeting those needs and requirements. And then it is a drain on our admin. And so if you think about it, even though they're independently run in those rooms, there's still going to be times, right? Like we just talked about the coordination of all the spaces. Well, who does that? Admin. An issue pops up.
Yep, hold in places, evacuations.
Yeah, hold in place, evacuate. And like some of our, when it's developmentally appropriate, our UPK kids are being invited to programming, which is great. And it's still just like one more thing that building admin has to think about. So they
were doing the Halloween parades. That was the cutest thing.
And then they just came, I think, for the Veterans Day assemblies at I want to say Brooks Hill came to mind.
And
so and our buildings are being amazing and our admin are being amazing, but it is an impact. I just want to recognize that. And then the fiscal resources. And so we were able to really absorb a lot of the furniture costs this year because we had a lot of things in storage, and Generations had a lot of things in storage that they were able to use to support us. But there will be specific furniture needs that happen. Those UPK classrooms have specific things that they need, including resources, right? So there's like dress up time and pretend play and all of those things. And you've got to have the baby dolls and I've eaten a lot of plastic tacos this year and spaghetti. I'm full. But so we've got to make sure that those rooms are staffed correctly. And the new staff that comes on there is mandatory PD with the curriculum, with the assessments that are required. We are the ones that really are providing that. And there's a lot of assessments that come with UPK. Golly, we do a good job of making sure we know how those kids are doing. But those are requirements from the program. And those also come at a cost. But we do own the data, so that's good for us. It is. It's really great. And then when it's time for us to bring on our...
With the CBO run UPK programs outside of the buildings, how do the assessments work there?
So Generations had already budgeted and purchased theirs, if I'm correct, for the outside ones. Go ahead, Matt.
So the outside program is actually a whole separate grant award than allocation. So their funding runs a little bit differently, and they have everything budgeted right within their budget, and it fits in the entire grant. So they take care of all those pieces.
What we decided to do, though, as a district was to adopt the same curriculum that Generations was using for all of our programming so that we could guarantee a consistency. And in doing that, we felt obligated to make those purchases. And then it's our ultimate responsibility to report to the state. And so, again, we wanted to make sure we're using high-quality assessments, bringing in Children's Institute to help with that. So we really wanted to build that in for them, and so we've taken on those costs. It's not a ton, but it's just something to keep in mind as we continue to grow, right? And then as we add our own classrooms, we need to really consider salaries and benefits, and so we'll get to that in just a sec. So right now, and this is where I might tap my friend Matt for a little bit of support if we have any specific questions, but right now we're contributing on average. So if we think about forget about the site-based one that Generations is running, because as Matt mentioned, that's a specific grant funding source. But the other 3 classrooms, we're contributing on average $56,000 per class. That's because there's a gap between the amount awarded from the federal grants and the amount that it takes to actually run a program. And so in total, that's $168,000 for the 3 federally funded UPK classrooms. And that is above the award that we get, right? So when we run our own classes, it's going to cost us about $101,000 above allocations to run our own classrooms per class, right? So we, again, not a stop, but we've got to keep that in mind as we're building budget, and there's not infinite amounts of money, and so something we'll have to give, as Matt would say, right? We can fund anything, we can't fund everything, right? So if we look at our
Smiles. It's like all these things just.
if we look at our financial projections, so this is our current year, we've contributed about we will contribute about $168,000 to run our 3 additional classes. Next year, if we add another class, so every year you're adding, how much, Matt? $56,000 until we get to 27, 28. So you can see it's an increase of $56,000, $56,000, $56,000, and then $101,000, and then continuing, right? So just that's where the money kind of washes out.
Is that difference based on Lisa's question? That it's now
Our own people.
us with our benefits, which tend to be better than community-based.
Absolutely.
Right, so that is the difference.
Yeah.
And that's
Yep.
the jump from the 56,000 per class to 101,000
Yeah.
per class, is that now it's district employees?
It's
District
our
employees,
district
right?
employees.
So it's just
Right,
it's
is,
basically taking and projecting our own
Retirement.
teacher, our own paraprofessional, the retirement system, all of those, our health insurance,
the
and dental
perks.
benefits that we have. It's
So
basically lumping those all into the estimate.
if we held, let's say we get the 28, 29, and these all, like, assuming we get there and this all holds, and it's 538 and 28, 29, 2930. If we don't add another, does it stay at
Per year,
per year?
53,
Give or take.
Plus or minus,
538,000.
right? I
Plus or
did not
minus, yeah.
factor in. I did not
did.
escalate costs. I
Yeah.
didn't go out 5 or 6 years. Took
Yeah.
kind of current estimated
contracts, all that
cost
stuff,
and kind
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
So
okay, yeah.
And yeah, it would be each year. If we're going to have like 28, 29, if we're going to have 10 classrooms, 8
It's
of which are
costing-
CBOs and 2 of which are ours, every
costing
single
us
year we have that
538 on
configuration, it'll be
top of-
538, 538, 538.
And it would be 56,000 above allocations for the 8 community-based and 101,000 for the school ones, for each of the school ones.
Yep.
That's a big difference. It's really interesting to see how that
It is a big
shakes out.
difference.
Yeah, it's just interesting to have it be like an 80-20 split. Like, what other situation does the district have where like 20% of the employees doing the same job get benefits and the full salary?
Well, again, a point of
Doesn't.
advocacy.
So, yeah, that's why when we're at our legislative things,
Yeah.
events, and when I'm talking, and all of us are able to do that in February and go to Albany as well. But that is a huge topic that we're pushing because for so many reasons, we need more funding. So and that's what I was going to say, like, ideally, we will be getting more funding, hopefully.
Reason that the goal is to have 2 that are in the district versus having them all be CBO, or like, I guess to me it seems strange that we'd have some like in the same building. There could potentially be some in the same building where some are CBO and some are district.
There's a
That could be-
there's a passion, I should say, that we own it. So so unless that information changes as we move along, then we'll monitor this and adjust this plan accordingly.
And not all of the CBOs would necessarily have to be in building. Like we actually just had someone reach out that would like to put in an RFP for this next year, and they would run it on site.
Right, and I think in the past, there weren't a ton of, this was a problem in the past, prior when the RFP had gone out years ago, there really wasn't a lot of interest. So I think that also partially falls into it.
There's, from a developmental standpoint, in a school readiness, having a child not transition from another building. I mean, that would be a reason why you'd want, pre-UPK in our buildings. Familiar faces, familiar surroundings. You can't undersell that. So, I mean, there's value in that, just like there's things to consider on the opposite side of that.
Yeah, and we could make a decision as a district, depending on direction that we get, and saying like no more CBOs in buildings. You have to run them in your own sites, and like we're at our capacity, and everything else is run on site unless it's going to be one of our programs. We can go any number of directions. We could also cut it off at 7 classes and say financially this is what we're willing to contribute until the funding sources change. We really just wanted to spell some things out and make some projections so we could see potential implications.
That's why we didn't want to add 4. Right? I mean, because, why not add 4?
But also adding 4 adds 4, it's a lot more work, right? And so if you think about what Lisa and Kelly are doing on top of this, it's pretty bananas.
And to keep it, do it well, like you were saying.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we want it. Although they're community-based partners, ultimately our name is on everything, and we're accountable to the state. So we need to make sure we're doing this well.
So that's kind of a question you're leaving us with then, is what direction do we want in terms of partnership between CBOs and then housing it ourselves as we continue to grow this slowly but strongly?
Yep.
And a question for you, and maybe you're going to go over it on the next slide, because this is a question all of the tiny people, mom and dads, are asking. Who do they contact to get into this lottery?
Yeah.
Like,
So
how does this happen?
Well, let's go. Okay. So this is what we are, and this is what we're hoping to do. So as early as tomorrow, I'm ready to put out the RFPs. We have that ready to go. Now, remember, these projections are based on the desire of community-based organizations to partner with us, as well as us vetting those community-based organizations. So we could get back 0 community-based partners that want to partner with us, and we're stagnant. We could get back 10, and then we vet them, and we're like, oh, there's only 3 that are viable. But then we come back to the board, and you say, financially, we're going to go 1 more. Right? So there's lots of variables here.
That's why you'll see check-in points up
Right.
here. And I think this was very timely because we wanted to get this to the board so you had a good idea of the bigger picture and the pace that we're taking. But by January 23rd, we should have a good idea of who's nibbling at the RFPs.
Yeah.
Right?
So we would bring that back to the January 23rd workshop, because I know you're not sick of us yet. So we'll come and do another presentation. And then by the business meeting, we would be able to make the recommendations to the board based on what we hear back from you on the 23rd. And then we would open lottery. And let's go and try to have that ready to go, and families know by April 15th, so that we're good community partners with all of the private organizations. And then we are also responsive to the needs of our families in our districts.
It's a whole month earlier than last year.
I
was
know.
just gonna, okay.
Yeah, we're
But
getting better.
I will make sure that there's timely communication, that as we hear questions, that we're trying to answer them in the updates.
Sorry, who do they reach out to? Do they email Tracy Hall?
Nope. So we will put out. So Lindsay and I have already started working on the communication. So we'll do what we did last year. So we'll do a mailing. So we're able to pull from our census reports with Dan Koistic the mailing for all of our students who will be turning 4 and are eligible for the pre-K. We'll send that out. We'll also put it on all of our social medias. I will reflect and say we need to do a better job of targeting our low-income families who are eligible for one of the classes, because we have 18 seats that are based on our allocations from that other grant are slated for our students who are low income. And we did not fill those seats this year with students with low income. And so I know we're missing families. So we're going to really be strategic about how we get that information out to those families and make sure that we are really reaching them all. But so we'll do a mass mailing. We will do lots of social media pushes for families. We will have it on our website in a clear place so people can understand how to apply. And then the RFP process, just for everybody to understand, that mailing has to go out to all of the eligible partners in our borders. So I have a list from last year, but I'll update that and make sure we have everybody on there. And then we also put that on our social medias as well.
There's an important, this timeline does not match up with the budget process. Okay, so that's why, we're getting this in here early. February 13th is not the instructional budget, right? That's coming in March. So we're going to be needing feedback and information. I will be about, yes, this timeline or this process of adding one extra is going to work within because once we go out and commit to the families, it's a commitment. So that's another reason why, we're at, it's still a budget vote, right?
So last year, if I remember correctly, when the application went out, we were still finalizing locations, and so the application did not include any
That's right.
information for the parents about where UPK would be. So this year is the hope that we'll be able to have the application give them more information about what the options might be as far as locations and wraparound care availability and
Yeah, I would hope so. But then in reality, it is our decision on where families would go.
I think it's, again, as we're developing it, and we're still trying to understand when we bring children back and what other rooms that we need, we might not know exactly in January or February when this is out there to give that specific information, but we will be able to communicate as we narrow that down. I know that's not the answer to your
it
question.
was just awkward last year when it was like it could be any of 5 classrooms.
Yep.
It
We're
could
not
be.
telling you where.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
it's kinda-
and
usually
that's
you
how
get
the
tour
process
and-
works
and all that.
actually in all the other districts. I experienced that in my own child's district is you apply for UPK, you can say I need wrap care, and that's the only, everything else is random.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So last year we didn't even know. Like it didn't even say some
Wrap
will be
care.
in buildings. This year, since it's happened, I guess there.
Yeah.
Well, this year we also have a bona fide contact person. We know what we know now, but we didn't know last year. So knowing that that's a priority, communicating. I think Kelly and Lisa are great partners.
Yep.
And they'll be
Yeah.
So we'll be able to anticipate some of those.
Yeah,
pieces.
I think just saying
Yeah.
it would be one of these types of options. Like,
Yep,
not that they're gonna
absolutely.
choose on which classroom, but
Yeah. So we will put out as much information as we know, but really the only thing we need back from parents is I can only attend if I have wrap care because that is that's the game changer for families, right?
And you probably don't know this answer. Is it possible that we would be able to go back to the Pines, or do they not have space?
I don't know where we're at with that community
Yeah.
center building yet. Haven't had that conversation, but I will with Jeannie just to see in their conversations. Because if we were able to take one of the classrooms back to Pines of Parenton, then that would open up a space in our
That's
buildings
what I was thinking.
potentially. So we will see.
And that might, yeah.
Well, if it all comes at a cost, right? And so that's part of the decision we would have to make as a district. And don't forget, it's not just the money, right? It's also the drains on other things. So we just have to make sure we're ready for all of it.
So this is not a right now question, but just something I'd like to put out there where there are programs in the community for children who need a higher level of support than can be offered in a typical classroom, whether they're like co-taught classrooms or self-contained. And those run a wait list consistently. And we, of course, I'm assuming have Fairport students on wait lists. So just something to be keeping our eye on. Is there a way that we can help meet those needs of our students in-house as we grow the UPK program?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And although we would love to do that, those are completely different funding sources. And I'll let Lisa speak to this specifically.
Right. So the special ed grant funding that would create those programs, what would happen is any child in Monroe County who is on a wait list would have our Fairport classroom as a choice. It would not necessarily be for Fairport students. So if we built it, you would just have to be aware that any child in the county could pick our classroom to be the classroom. And then there's also the issue of there's the special ed funding, but then it is very delayed. So it's about 2 to 3 years lapse between when you lay out the money and when you get reimbursed for it. And that's if you're qualifying for the grant. So you have to budget for eating it for 2 to 3 years if you're going to do that. So those are the things to consider there.
Yeah, and I think obviously, like I said, we would love to do that. Special education is a passion of mine, and I know it is of yours too, Lisa. But again, those come at a significant cost financially. But then also knowing that those classrooms might service a Fairport student, is that something that we want to take on financially as a district, knowing that it's not servicing all Fairport students, right?
It does bill to their district though, right? Like our district pays when they go to.
Right, but we would foot
Others.
that bill for probably 3 years. And so basically you're just knowing that you're fully funding that classroom consistently, year to year to year to year.
It's not like school age funding. That's all coming from the county. So wherever it's housed, it still is coming from the same funding source. So we wouldn't be sending a bill to Rochester City if we had like a Rochester.
Because they're
City
Monroe
student.
County.
'Cause it's all Monroe County.
Yeah.
So possibly another point of advocacy.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean,
Education
yeah,
would be
I think
full.
that's a huge point of advocacy that we don't have the power to change. Well, we don't have the power to change, but you
No,
all
it's
as
something that
voices.
I often.
I'm
I-
sure
I
you do,
br- yeah,
Erica.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm
I
sure.
actually brought it up with the lawyers at the conference as well and asked what could be done. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So that's interesting though, because in NISBA, right, one of the resolutions was to keep that funding with the county. So if you're suggesting otherwise, then now we have to look at our NISBA advocacy efforts because they've been directed based on this last meeting to do otherwise.
Yeah, and that's
Am I hearing
why-
that correctly? That we
Well, also
want the
looking at
funding to come
UPK
differently.
funding too, is there a different way that we carve out money in UPK for a child that has an IEP or for an increased level of services? Are there ways that we can create within our own classrooms, having extra levels of support so that we, have extra paras, have a different ratio that doesn't quite go to being self-contained and the separate funding, but we're still able as a district to support our students.
Yeah, and I just want people to also know that when there's students that need additional services that are in our traditional programs, those services come into our classrooms. So it's not like we're turning away students that have additional needs, but what Lisa's referring to is a very specialized program that right now we don't house, and there are intense wait lists.
Thank you very much.
Awesome.
Till the next time.
Yeah.
Sure we'll be on December.
In some way or another.
It's our holiday gift to you guys. Nowhere else I'd rather spend a holiday. Does that sound gentleman?
Absolutely. Okay, so I think we do have time to actually move into our next portion, which we will be entering into executive session. So we'll stop recording for folks that are watching patiently at home, and then we will come back at 7 to have our business board meeting. So we'll stop that. But I do need a motion to enter into executive session for matters pertaining to employment history and job performance to individuals in collective bargaining units. Brian and Mary Caitlin. Okay, so we have, yep, I was going to mention the people that can stay too, just as, yes. Oh, we don't?
Sorry, that was in the open meeting presentation. We don't have to list
Who stays?
people invited to participate. I learned a lot at that session. It was a good one.
So now we'll just stare at you awkwardly while you decide whether or not to list the people.
I will not be listing the people.
Are we gonna stay here or are we gonna go?